Hello and welcome. Today we get to George Lazenby on this season of Big Shot Critic, Bond vs. Bond, The First Outings. I ran a highly scientific Facebook poll the other day in a James Bond group and found that 2 out of 4 Bond fans really love On Her Majesty's Secret Service. 1 out of 4 don't care much either way, and 1 out of 4 are like me and didn't like it. So why am I in the minority? And can I change anyone's mind in the majority? I've actually been in this position before, but the opposite. I did a video on Godzilla 1998 explaining how I like it. But the overwhelming majority of Godzilla fans hate this movie. I was not as respectful of their opinions as I should have been, and I paid the price. So if you like this movie, I'm going to be more respectful and sensitive to your opinion. I'm just going to be more respectful and sensitive to my opinion. To add to the confusion, On Her Majesty's Secret Service was not well received when it first came out. It was the 6th Bond film but had the lowest box office take since the first. And for about 35 years, Bond fans considered it a disaster. Then for some reason, about 20 years ago, Bond fans started liking it. And even the ones who love it will agree with me on that timeline. So why was it hated for decades? It was the first without Sean Connery, and that was bound to have some pushback. Imagine if we suddenly got a new John Wick. It wouldn't go over well. There were other reasons too, if you ask me, and we'll get to those later. Why did Bond fans suddenly start liking it 20 years ago? That's a harder one to answer. Some say the more serious and emotional Daniel Craig movies brought more attention to earlier serious and more emotional Bond films, of which there are only 3, On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Timothy Dalton's films. And some say Bond fans felt George was judged too harshly and deserved a second look, that he was bullied and there was a movement to give him another chance. Others yet say Brosnan's final film in 2002, Die Another Day, jumped the shark so badly that people wanted more grounded and dramatic Bond films. And before Daniel Craig came along, George Lazenby would have been the obvious choice, followed by Timothy Dalton. I'd say it's a combination of the 3, along with, frankly, George Lazenby's original critics in the fan base dying off. There's been a notable uptick in the popularity for Timothy Dalton's films as well, so I would say there was a general swing back toward more serious Bonds, with George Lazenby being the biggest beneficiary of that movement. And I'd like to kick off this discussion on the topic of George. Funnily enough, as much praise as this movie gets, almost none of it makes its way to poor old George. Even the biggest fans don't have much to say in support, but I actually think he did pretty good. He's a bit of a try-hard in the first act, lots of Bondian throwaway lines.
I'll leave you to tidy up. Royal Beluga, north of the Caspian. What a lovely surprise, our meeting again so soon.
He might as well roam the hallways muttering, "shaken, not stirred," to everyone who passes by. But aside from that, he actually does a very good job. Whenever I go through the movies and try to think which Bonds are better, I always come away feeling like each of them brought something so strong to the role. Even George. He's probably the most intense Bond. He's not as strong a presence as Connery was in his first outing, but he does feel more physically threatening. And anyway, it's almost an unfair comparison because On Her Majesty's Secret Service was set up with a new Bond in mind. That is to say, the supporting cast is seriously beefed up to compensate for the Connery-shaped hole in the center. This was the first time we got a new Bond actor, after all. The filmmakers were bracing the rest of the film as best they could. However, I first saw On Her Majesty's Secret Service in 2017 when I was well aware that there were many different Bond actors, and I still didn't like it. It wasn't George's fault, though. Now, in order to keep the interest of the big-time fans of this movie, I'm going to start with the things I love, and then proceed to the things I don't love. The song We Have All the Time in the World is probably one of my top 3 songs written for any Bond movie. It's absolutely marvelous. Fans of this movie love it, and I love it. If you listen to it, you'll love it. That's one thing I agree with completely with the hardcore fans. And the John Barry score actually is one of his best, for sure, like they say. Another thing they love that I agree with is the supporting cast. Diana Rigg is the best Bond girl. Her romance with Bond is a little bit off because she's so broken, and that works as a love interest for literary Bond, but not so much for movie Bond, and George is definitely playing movie Bond. But aside from that little complaint, she really is the best. Telly Savalas makes a very memorable villain. He's not my favorite Blofeld, just because I personally prefer the mustache-twirling kind in Donald Pleasance and Charles Gray. The more mustache-twirling, the better in my book. But aside from that personal opinion, he really is very good. His domineering presence makes him feel like a very real threat to Bond. You can count on one hand the villains that feel like they have the brains and the brawn to match Bond. Red Grant, Scaramanga, 006, and Telly Savalas Blofeld. He's probably the lowest on that list, but the list is so short, I'm just glad he's there. Of course, M and Moneypenny are excellent, and their roles are beefed up slightly compared to the Connery films. And Gabriele Ferzetti is also outstanding as Tracy's father. And I'm not just saying that, he really is outstanding. The movie is very faithful to the book, and this is a love-hate thing for me. I think it's awesome that it's probably the most faithful Fleming adaptation to film, but I feel like the adaptation process could have used a little more work. Now, to you, hardcore fans of the film, try to relax. I'm not questioning Fleming. I'm just saying there are some things that work better on the page than the screen, and we all know it.
Die.
Die, Blofeld, die!
The fans love the adaptation and feel that the story is one of the more interesting and epic Bond movies as a result. I feel that, you know? How many movies have gone wrong by straying too far from the source material? It's really very commendable that director Peter Hunt went to such great lengths to preserve the story so completely. You know, I think it was the wrong decision, but it was commendable. We're going to get into spoilers now. There are 3 story elements that I think are weird. You know, when you're watching a movie and it takes a weird turn and you think, okay, I guess I can roll with that. Like in Iron Man 3, when a whole section of the movie is Tony Stark working with a kid. It feels unusual, but you let the movie go to see if it works, and sometimes it does. On Her Majesty's Secret Service takes 3 very weird turns, all in the space of about 20 minutes, and none of them feel all that necessary. Now, to you hardcore fans of the film, just give me a minute and hear me out. The 3 weird turns I'm talking about are genealogy, allergies, and hypnotism. Now, to those of you who haven't seen the movie and are amazingly confused, hang on a minute, I'll be right back. To the big-time fans of this movie, I don't mean any disrespect to Fleming. I haven't read his books, but I imagine these concepts fit more naturally into the novel than they do in the movie. Novels can take their time with things and ease the reader into it. Movies only have a couple of hours. In terms of adaptation, I think only the hypnotism should have stayed. You can have a simpler reason for Bond going undercover than heraldry, and you can have a simpler reason for Piz Gloria than an allergy clinic. It's about making choices that are less jarring for an audience. Peter Hunt was so intent on a straight adaptation that he didn't consider film language all that much. Some things go down easy for an audience, and other things don't. Obviously, a lot of people really like this movie, so it works for them. But if you ask me, this was 3 weird pills you asked the audience to swallow after you just asked them to swallow the giant pill of a new James Bond. It's just too much. To those of you who haven't seen the movie, thank you for waiting. Now I'll explain. Bond sneaks into Blofeld's mountaintop lair by posing as a genealogist from the College of Arms in London, because Blofeld wants to be certified as a count. Why? Because he's a supervillain. Whatever. The movie devotes so much screen time to it, though, just because it's the way Bond snuck in the book. Just sneak him in a different way. The only good that comes out of it is learning James Bond's family motto, which made an awesome movie title 30 years later. The world is not enough. Upon going undercover, Bond learns that Blofeld's mountaintop lair, called Piz Gloria, is an allergy clinic, and Blofeld is posing as a world-class allergy doctor. Why? Before going on, I forgot to mention that Piz Gloria is one of the best Bond locations in any Bond movie, and easily one of my top 3 villainous lairs. There is, likewise, a lot of screen time devoted to the discussion of allergies and cures for allergies, because Blofeld hypnotizes his patients as part of their treatment. They then return to their homes all over the world where they become unwitting sleeper agents to carry out Blofeld's evil plan. Again, just find a simpler distribution mechanism for Blofeld's evil plot. The discussion of allergies and hypnotism just takes up so much screen time. Maybe keep one or the other, but definitely not both. In the end, it's just a distribution network for his evil plans and didn't have to be so complicated. It's weird, and it didn't have to be weird. Once again, this is just my opinion. Way more Bond fans disagree with me than agree, so you be the judge. I think it's weird. For a lot of people, it works. All the allergy patients are super attractive young women, by the way, but there is nothing surprising about that in a Bond movie. But all that is nothing compared to my biggest issue with On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, right up front, I'm going to tell you this is 100% a me thing. I'm sure there are some people out there who will agree with me, but apparently most don't. To the fans of this movie, try not to throw anything at the TV. The action is terrible. I'm sorry, it's terrible. The concepts are always really cool. Fighting guys on the beach, car chase in the mountains, chasing each other on bobsleds, all really cool stuff. But the editing is so bad. This is ironic because director Peter Hunt was an editor before this, his directing debut. And not just any editor, he edited the first 5 Bond films. I'll boil it down for you into 2 reasons why I hate the action editing in this movie. 1, Peter Hunt is always shoving the camera into unstable places, on skis, in cars, in bobsleds. It makes for super shaky camera work that just makes the action a slog. And 2, Hunt's action editing style is madness. The simplest fights are broken up into countless shots, and there are random zooms in and out. It makes the action so horribly dizzying. Here's Bond taking down 3 guys in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Am I crazy? You see how insane the editing is? And it's like that in every action scene. I would make a joke about not letting editors direct movies, but John Glenn reversed the curse. He was the editor on this movie, and he went on to direct some very good Bond movies in the 80s. I get that this is a matter of taste. What nauseates me clearly thrills many others. But somewhere deep in my heart of hearts, I have to ask something that might really upset the fans of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. How many of them are bandwagon fans? I'm just saying. There isn't a lot of bandwagoning in the James Bond fandom because the opinions vary to an extraordinary degree. But if there were bandwagon fans, this is where they'd be hiding. To me, the editing is abysmal and a clear contributing factor to this movie being hated for decades. And fans even say the cinematography is a highlight of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. To me, the opening shots of the 3 blind mice in Dr. No are more beautiful than any shot in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It makes me think, how many of them are just blowing hot air and want to fit in? Just a thought. And if that upsets you, hardcore fans, just know this. I actually like Diamonds Are Forever. So if it makes you feel better, you can make fun of me for that. The other things I mentioned bug me a little bit, but really it's the editing style in this movie that drives me batty. I can live with the wild plot turns into genealogy and allergies. Those discussions in the movie are actually performed and directed very well. It's all just so unusual for a Bond film. Even the disco hypnotism is entertaining enough just because it's so weird.
I've taught you to love chickens, to love their flesh, their voice.
But On Her Majesty's Secret Service has a lot of action. And if you're like me and you find it a little nauseating, then you'll be like me and you'll only own this movie because of your OCD. I always have to watch all 25 of them in a row before I start over again. If I'm in the mood for Dr. No and I'm only on Goldfinger, too bad. 23 movies to go, Sonny. It does have redeeming qualities, like I said. Diana Rigga's Tracy, the song by Louis Armstrong, and the Peace Gloria location. All great, but I just can't get over that dreadful editing. It makes me feel unwell. Maybe I just need some disco hypnotism.
You love Peter Hunt's editing. You love his cuts, his zooms.
It's time to give On Her Majesty's Secret Service a rating, and I give it 4 out of 10 commandments. Again, this is just my opinion. Now on to Bond vs. Bond. This all puts George Lazenby squarely at dead last with 4. Unfortunately for poor George, he will not have an opportunity to redeem his marksmanship skills. I had to throw one reference in here that only Pawn fans would get. The other 3 are in a tight grouping, with Roger Moore in 3rd with 7, Daniel Craig in 2nd with 7.5, and Sean Connery in 1st place with 8. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget, each season of Big Shot Critic is voted on by you guys, the viewers, so if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. Don't miss Roger Moore's first outing next time, Live and Let Die, and be sure to like and subscribe for more sensitive and respectful commentary. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.